This is Land of Havilah, Genesis 13. Abram, Sarai, Lot, and their households are going back from Egypt to Canaan. What's next? Father, please open our eyes to the Scripture. Verse 1. Abram went up out of Egypt, he, his wife, all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. He went on his journeys from the south as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. There Abram called on Yahweh's name. Comment: in verse 1, Abram left Egypt and came into the south of Canaan, also called the Negev. From there he traveled north as far as his old altar on the mountain between Bethel and Ai. On that mountain he had a long-distance view in every direction. From there he called on Yahweh's name. He feels the need to connect with Yahweh. Verse 5. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks, herds, and tents. The land was not able to bear them, that they might live together, for their possessions were so great that they couldn't live together. There was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites lived in the land at that time. Comment: we found in verse 5 that Abram isn't the only one prospering. Lot's doing pretty well himself. Together they had so many animals they were wearing out the grass. The riches are causing strife, so it's not clear as to whether the riches are a good thing or a bad thing. They certainly have their downside. Abram's and Lot's herdsmen are arguing over the grazing land, and the local Perizzites and Canaanites are competing for the grass as well. Verse 8. Abram said to Lot, "Please let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are relatives. Isn't the whole land before you? Please separate yourself from me. If you go to the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you go to the right hand, then I'll go to the left." Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. So Lot chose the plain of the Jordan for himself. Lot traveled east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, and Lot lived in the cities of the plain, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Comment: it seems Abram did a faithless thing in the last chapter, but now he's doing an unselfish thing by giving Lot his choice of land. This is Abram knowing that Yahweh is going to take care of him no matter what, so he feels he can afford to be generous and take second choice of land. He's bringing a halt to the strife between his household and Lot's household by putting Lot first. Abram knew by instinct what Romans 12:10 would later say, quote, "In love of the brothers, be tenderly affectionate toward one another, in honor preferring one another," end quote. Sacrificing land to Lot was better than any animal sacrifice that Abram could make. From the high spot on which they were surveying the land, Abram and Lot could see the valley of the Jordan River. The edge of the valley was about 5 miles away. Verse 10 says the valley was green as the irrigated fields of Egypt, green all the way to Zoar, which was somewhat south of where they were standing. The valley of the Jordan isn't green in modern times, but as it says in verse 10, it was well watered at that time, which was before the Lord destroyed Sodom. Not surprisingly, Lot chose that green valley. Sodom lay in that valley somewhat close to Zoar. So Lot split off from Abram, and in verse 12 he started living in the valley. Presumably when Lot moved to the city, his servants stayed in the countryside with his livestock, or maybe Lot sold everything and retired to the city life. Verse 13. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinners against Yahweh. Yahweh said to Abram, after Lot was separated from him, "Now lift up your eyes, and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward, for I will give all the land which you see to you and to your offspring forever. I'll make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can count the dust of the earth, then your offspring may also be counted. Arise, walk through the land in its length and its width, for I will give it to you." Comment: to review everything that God has told Abram so far, he'll become a great nation, his name will be great, he'll be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Anyone who blesses Abram will be blessed. Anyone who treats Abram with contempt will be cursed. His descendants will possess the land around Shechem, and now God's saying his descendants will possess all the land he can see from the top of that mountain between Bethel and Ai, and the descendants will possess it forever. Forever is a breathtaking concept, and his descendants will be so numerous they can't be counted. Verse 18, Abram moved his tent and came and lived by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to Yahweh. Comment, Abram went south to Hebron and once again built an altar. Hebron's in the hills overlooking Lot's home in the city of Sodom. At least it's near enough to Sodom that in chapter 19 Abram will witness the smoke rising up from Sodom. Lot will lose everything in the valley in Sodom, and Abram will be safe in the hills. So it's a chilling thing to think of what happened to Lot after he chose the Green Valley, and we see that Abram's sacrifice of the land to Lot turned out to be no sacrifice at all. That's the chapter. Lot and Abram will meet again in the next chapter, which will be Genesis 14 at landofhavilah.net, Genesis 14. This is the map of Genesis 13. Whenever we look at the map of this area, we can always get a quick idea of distance by looking at the Dead Sea, which is about 10 miles across at the widest point. This is Egypt, where Abram started the chapter. He left Egypt and came into the desert south country, also called the Negev. He traveled north from there as far as the mountain between Bethel and Ai, where he had the old altar. Bethel and Ai are side by side here. From the mountain between Bethel and Ai, he could see all around. Zooming in, we can see the valley of the Jordan River. We can see it's not green here, but it was in the days before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. From the mountain where Abram and Lot stood about here, they were overlooking this Jordan River valley. Zooming out, the text says the valley was green all the way to Zoar. Exact location unsure, but it was associated with Sodom and Gomorrah. And by modern discovery of a city destroyed by a fiery cataclysm just north of the Dead Sea, this is a good guess as being the location of all those cities that were destroyed. After Lot split off, Abram moved to the Oaks of Mamre, which is at modern Hebron here. Oaks of Mamre is in the hill country, and from here Abram will be able to see the smoke of Sodom rising up. Genesis 14 is next.